Hello everyone, it's Succulents Box. Today I want to share with you some tips on how to take care of this succulent, the Kalanchoe Flapjacks. The Kalanchoe Flapjacks are a really beautiful and unique succulent. They have paddle-shaped leaves with bright red tips and can grow up to 2.5 feet tall with even taller flower stalks. It's important to note that this succulent is highly poisonous, especially the flowers. Eating any part of this plant will cause drooling, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and occasionally lightheadedness or difficulty breathing. If you live with pets or children, keep this plant out of reach and call a doctor immediately if you see any of these signs. Toxicity aside, this succulent is pretty easy to care for. Flapjacks are hardy and drought tolerant in a warm environment, but it doesn't do well in the cold. So, let's get into the basic care needs of your Kalanchoe Flapjacks. As I'd mentioned, flapjacks hate the cold. Because it's from Madagascar, it needs warm temperatures 24/7 to thrive. If you don't live in USDA zones 10 through 12, it's best to keep this pretty little plant indoors. Your flapjacks will go dormant if the weather drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're particularly susceptible to frost damage. It's essential to keep them nice and toasty, making an indoor home environment perfect for them. For lighting, the Kalanchoe Flapjacks aren't as picky. As long as they get at least 6 hours of bright sunlight each day, you're good. However, like all succulents, flapjacks have delicate leaves that will burn in direct afternoon sunlight. To avoid potential sunburns, I recommend keeping your flapjacks on a sunny windowsill that receives direct sunlight in the morning, but less sunlight throughout the rest of the day. In terms of water, flapjacks are pretty drought tolerant and prefer a hands-off approach to watering. When you water this succulent, do so only when the soil is completely dry, and use the bottom watering method to ensure the plant drinks as much as it needs. Leave the pot out when you're done watering to let any excess water drain. Your soil will play a big role in how much water your flapjacks need, since this succulent relies on well-draining soil to avoid root rot and overwatering. Typically, a cactus potting mix from the garden store would work just fine, but you can also modify other indoor potting mixes with sand, peat, and perlite to improve drainage. When handling your flapjacks, it's also important to note the layer of Farina coating the leaves. This protective wax coats the leaves and prevents the leaves from drying out or burning in harsh sunlight. It's best to avoid touching or rubbing the plant leaves as much as possible, as it can wear down the wax layer. The most interesting part about the Kalanchoe Flapjack succulent is its unique dormancy cycle. Since it comes from Madagascar, flapjacks typically spend half of their year in bright sunlight and the other half in darkness. During the winter months, it's normal for this plant to receive only a few hours of sunlight each day and roughly 14 hours in the dark. Knowing this light cycle is essential if you want your flapjacks to bloom. Typically, the Kalanchoe Flapjacks bloom roughly 4 months after waking from its dormancy and will need at least 8 hours of bright sunlight to bloom. The increase in sunlight will also brighten up your flapjacks' red tips. While caring for your flapjacks in the winter, try to limit the amount of sunlight they receive each day to only a few hours. You can also decrease the amount of water it receives by only watering when the soil is completely dry. Now that we've covered the basics, let's get into some extra tips that will help your flapjacks thrive. One of the best ways to propagate your flapjacks is through leaf cuttings. To make a leaf cutting, take a pair of clean, sharp scissors and cut the leaf at the node point. You can also use a knife to make your cuttings. If you have any healthy fallen leaves, use those for propagating too. They work just as good. When you have your cutting, let the trimmed ends callus over before laying it in a pot with fresh soil. Bury the end of the leaf a little bit and mist the soil to keep it moist. After a few weeks, your leaf will start to take root. The most common problems plant parents have when caring for the Kalanchoe Flapjack stem from overwatering. Mushy, discolored leaves, root rot, and slowed growth are all common symptoms of an overwatered succulent, and your best solution is to improve drainage. You can do this by adding gravel to the bottom of your pot or make a new soil mixture with a bit of extra sand and perlite. Another way to ensure your flapjacks receive plenty of drainage is your pot. A pot made of porous material like concrete, terracotta, or unglazed ceramic will help improve. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more from us, feel free to drop us a line, leave a comment, and consider subscribing. Happy gardening!
For more, you can find us at succulentsbox.com or on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest.